Hi students, and welcome to this week's video lesson. Today, you'll be participating in another music theory lesson, and we'll be continuing on our journey to learn to read music. Your assignment this week is going to be an online worksheet that you can find on Google Classroom. Students are not required to make a video this week for their assignment. You can still be practicing though, and here's what I suggest. Go back and review some of the lessons from previous weeks, play along with the videos that I made. Also, if you haven't turned in some of your video assignments yet, this is a great week to catch up on them. Finally, if you're interested in participating in strings karate, this is a great week to try to create some of your strings karate videos. I hope that gives you some practice ideas. Anyways, let's begin. The topic of today's lesson is the staff, clef signs, and the D string notes. We're going to begin with a little review. First, remember that last time we learned the staff is the 5 lines and 4 spaces where the music notes are written. Also, we learned that the lines and spaces are numbered from bottom to top. So this bottom line of the staff is referred to as line 1, and you number up from there. Also, same thing with the spaces. This space is referred to as space 1, and we number up from there. Last time, we compared the staff to a building where the bottom floor is labeled as floor 1 and you number up from the bottom floor. Let's move on. Last time, we also talked about 2 different types of notes. First, we learned about line notes. And line notes are easy to identify because the staff line crosses right through the middle of the note head. Also, we talked about space notes, and you can identify space notes because they sit in between the staff lines. Finally, we talked about identifying the location of a note based on the line or space number that the note sits on. So, this note, for example, you would call the location of this note line 3 because it sits right on the 3rd line of the staff. Next, let's talk about clef signs. We briefly talked about clef signs last time, and I told you that clef signs assign letter names to the lines and spaces of the staff. Let me show you what I mean. So here we have a note. We can identify the location of this note as line 1. However, the musician does not know what note to play unless there's a clef sign at the beginning of the staff. So for example, this clef sign is called treble clef. The treble clef assigns letter names to all the lines and spaces on the staff, and this line 1 note becomes E. When there's a treble clef at the beginning of the staff, you know that line 1 is always played as E. Let's try a different clef. You may recognize this clef as being bass clef. When there's a bass clef at the beginning of the staff, the lines and spaces have different letter names. So this line 1 note is played as G. Let's do one more clef. This one is called an alto clef. When you have an alto clef at the beginning of the staff, then the line 1 note is played as F. So you can see when there's no clef sign at the beginning of the staff, there's no way to tell which pitch you're supposed to play. The instrument you play determines the clef that you read. So, if you play the violin or another high-pitched instrument, you read from the treble clef. Students who play piano may know that the right hand of piano reads from the treble clef, and that's because the right hand plays the higher notes. Now we have another clef called the bass clef, which represents lower notes. If you play the cello, the bass, or another low-pitch instrument, you would read off bass clef. Bass clef is also the left hand of piano. Finally, we have one more clef in strings class, and it is called the alto clef. The neat thing about the alto clef is the viola is the only modern instrument that reads from the alto clef. None of your friends in band or choir would read off of alto clef, just viola students only. Isn't that kind of cool? Now let's go over some basic rules of the staff. First of all, the placement of the note on the staff correlates with the note's pitch. And here's what I mean. If you have notes that are drawn high up on the staff, the pitch of those notes is going to sound higher. And if you have notes drawn lower down on the staff, like these notes, then you know the sound of the notes is going to be lower. Also, you should start associating the staff with a musical ladder. Let me show you what I mean. Here you can see I've drawn a lot of notes and they're gradually going up. They almost look like a ladder or a staircase even. And so when the notes step up like this, you move forward in the musical alphabet. And each one of these notes gets progressively higher and higher and higher in pitch. Last thing to notice is that these notes follow a pattern. They alternate between line note, space note, line note, space note. It truly looks like a musical ladder or a staircase. Now take a look here. The notes are moving in the opposite direction. It almost looks like you're going down a staircase or down a ladder. And so when the notes step down like this, each note gets gradually lower and lower in sound, and you will letter these notes backwards in the musical alphabet. So when you go up the staff, you move forward in the musical alphabet. When you go down the staff, you move backwards in the musical alphabet. So the staff represents a really wide range of notes. So that makes me ask, where should we begin? And what I decided is the best place to start is with the notes that we play the most on our instruments. And that would be the D string notes. So today, you're going to learn the location of your D string notes on the staff. Here you can see 3 staffs. This top one is a treble clef staff, so violin students will focus up here. This middle clef is the alto clef staff, and viola students will focus on these notes. Down at the bottom, the lowest notes, the bass clef. Cello and bass students can read and focus down here. And you'll see on the 3 staffs, I drew a note. This note represents open D string on your instrument. Notice how the 3 notes are in different locations depending on the clef at the beginning of the staff. Okay, so here we have the treble clef of D. And if you look carefully, you'll notice it is not on a line and it's actually not even in a space. It's kind of like in the space below the staff. A lot of times I refer to this note as the space in the basement. So the space in the basement is D for violin students. Violin students, whenever you see this note, you play the D string. Now here on the alto clef, you'll see the note is sitting on space 3. Space 3 on alto clef is D. Whenever you see this note, you always play open D. Now, down here on the bass clef, you see the note is on line 3. Cello and bass students, whenever you see the note on line 3, you play open D. Let's move on. Now you'll see I still have the 3 staves with the 3 different clef signs, and I've drawn in the note D for all 3 instruments. But this time I added one more extra note. Can you see how the second note is one step up from the first note? So remember, notes that are higher on the staff sound higher, and the staff works like a musical ladder or a musical staircase. So, students, I want you to think of the D major scale. What note is one note higher than D in the D major scale? Another way you can think of this is alphabetical order. What letter comes after D in the alphabet? You can even say the ABCs in your head. Did you get the letter E? If you did, nice job. Students, if you play violin, E, first finger, is line 1. If you play viola, the note on line 4 is E, played with first finger on D string. If you play cello or bass, E is on space 3. Again, this note E is played with one finger pressing down the D string. Let's go on. Here, I've added one more note. I'm extending our musical ladder up and up. Think about your scale, students. What note comes after E? If you said F sharp, you are correct. Awesome work, students. Great job building that scale. Okay. Now I've added one more note. Think about your scale, students. Think about alphabetical order. What note comes after F sharp? If you said G, great work, students. So notice, each note steps up. Each note sounds higher, as you know when you play your scale. As you go up the scale, each note sounds higher, and this is represented on the staff. Now, the way musicians learn how to read music is they memorize the placement of the notes on the staff. So your online worksheet this week that you will find on Google Classroom is going to help you begin to memorize what these notes look like on the staff so that eventually you can read songs from your book even when the letter names aren't written in. Great focus today, students. This concludes our lesson. Make sure you go to Google Classroom, you find the worksheet to complete for your assignment, and try to think of some fun things to practice on your instrument as well. I hope you have a wonderful week, students. Keep up your practice, and I'll see you next time.